Or have you ever spent weeks trying to make the right decisions, weeks on ends, and you're just trying to figure it out basically? Or you basically ask like 5 to 10 different people advice on the very thing that you're trying to make a decision on. And then when you think you're going to make a decision, then it's like, then you get even more confused. And so today we're going to talk about intuition versus fear. Um, and I just thought this was an important topic because this was something that I struggled with, and I wish like people talk more about it. And we're definitely not going to be just talking about and saying, "Oh, like it's just a gut feeling," because I feel like that's so it's so vague, and it's very subjective, right? Like it's like if you tell someone that who struggles between their intuition, listen to their intuition, versus their fear, it's very hard to distinguish when you're in that moment and you're like, dude, I'm just trying to make a decision. So that's what we're going to talk about. Okay, so the thing about it is usually the issue isn't intuition or it isn't trust. Really what it comes down to is it's like when you don't trust yourself to make the decision. It's like every decision basically feels unsafe, it feels dangerous, and basically the decision that you're about to make can feel dangerous, like can change the whole trajectory. But when you don't know, it feels harder, right? And so I just want to read the definition before we get into it of what intuition is. And I thought this was a good definition, found this online. It's a quiet inner knowing that guides you towards something even when you can't fully explain it. And then fear is a protective response that tries to keep you safe from uncertainty, discomfort, rejection, failure, or pain. And I would even argue that it could even be fear can even like basically create a story in your mind that hasn't even happened yet. Let me know in the chat if you've had that happen, where it will create this whole like story and scenario, and then when it comes down to it, it didn't even happen. So hey guys, so whoever's watching, today we're talking about intuition vs fear. And if that's something that you've experienced in terms of making the right decisions, basically, or if you've ever talked to 5 different people trying to make a decision, then you get even more confused. Or basically, if you struggle between the distinction between intuition and fear, and it's something that I'm getting right into because I feel like when it comes to that, a lot of people tell you, "Oh, go based on your gut feeling," but I feel like that's so vague and it's very subjective. And I want to explore this a little bit because this was one of my journey when it came to intuition and fear. And I've always had issues making decisions. Hey, Shakira, how are you? How are you doing today? And feel free to say hi. So we're talking about intuition vs fear. And I just want to know this, right? Because I just finished giving the definition of fear and intuition. Um, Fear is not necessarily bad because it can technically protect you. Good morning. Where are you from? Fear could technically protect you. Um, and but the problem is that fear can sometimes keep you in the same place. And it could stop you from growth. It could stop you from taking risk. Um, it could stop you basically from opening really big doors if you're not careful. Oh, you're in a nice hot city. I'm jealous. I'm in Canada, Toronto, Canada. So fear usually, so we're gonna talk about the differences. So fear usually, I would say fear is it's very loud in a quiet way. So it can be a very as you know, fear can be something very haunting. Hey Brittany, how are you doing? How's your day going so far? So fear can usually sound loud, but it's so quiet. It's usually something that could torment you if you're trying to make a decision. So it'll usually give you all these questions like, what if I fail? What if people judge me? What if I waste my money? What if this doesn't work? That's a popular one. What if I'm making a mistake? And so fear will usually offer these thoughts of questions, and usually you don't realize it because it's so subtle, but it will ask all these questions for you to ponder on. And then the deeper you get into these type of questions, because they're more on the negative side, you tend not to move forward because you start, I believe it's like you start asking yourself the wrong questions. It's like you're not asking yourself the right questions. So for example, like if I when I ask myself like, oh, what if it doesn't work? Oh, thank you so much. I've been trying something new. This was my birthday hair. Thank you so much, Shakira. Um, so example, like and then the more you become aware of these fearful questions, the easier it is to combat it. The easier it is to fight it and flip it. So one of the questions I usually recognize in my head, right, when it comes to fear, is what if it doesn't work? And usually I'll be like, what if it does work? And I try to challenge it. But that took years to do, right? That's what people don't talk about is a lot of times when we're trying to distinguish fear from intuition, it's usually very hard, especially if you're in a place where you're trying to make a decision. Like any of you guys trying to make a very hard decision right now? Um, and so basically, I found what fear does is fear will create a movie in your head. Basically, it creates this movie like based on the decision you're trying to make, and it will try to give you a foreshadow of what may happen. But the only twist is it's usually like a twisted thriller story. And then it gets you in this psychotic state where you're like, oh my god, what if that happens? Like I remember a time, like what's coming to mind, guys, a quick story is I remember I was almost going homeless because unfortunately I didn't have a really good family dynamic. And I remember where my mind went was I was imagining myself like lying down on a sidewalk, like sleeping on a sidewalk in the streets, like because I was like, I don't know where I'm gonna go from here. Like I don't have the right type of job. Like this was when I was younger. And I remember there was a flip side to it. And so basically, I would say that the fear was basically predicting disaster that didn't even happen yet. Like, guys, I was basically at that time, I was in a home. They give you perspective, and it was already imagining and foreshadowing the worst, right? And luckily, like this ended up being a good story, and like I had my church help me and stuff like that. But I remember thinking once I found a place, I was like, oh my goodness. It took me all through that. And then obviously when you come with those thoughts in that movie that the fear creates, then you're going through this stress, you're going through anxiety. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I spent all that time like thinking about the scenario and it didn't even happen. Like I think that was the first time that I caught on to that. Yeah, right? It's funny. I know, but it's like it's crazy sometimes like what fear can generate in your mind. It's nuts. Like it will tell you all these and then it's like if you don't sit back and look at what story fear is telling you, you will basically like you'll if you really focus on it, this is what I mean. If you Let me rephrase it, let me say it again. So if you focus on it, when you really look at the story, you'll be like, this doesn't make sense. Like unless like I don't talk to anyone, like if I were just look at that situation, right, when I was going homeless, it's like unless you're not talking to anyone, you don't have any support at all, like that is a very highly unlikely that that's going to happen, right? But when you're in that moment and if you get swept away by the story, it feels real. But usually it's very rare that like your biggest fear will come through because it's usually so exaggerated and like I would say like dramatic and like it feels like this whole film and you're the center of the world, that main character, and you're like this ain't happening. Any of you guys had that happen? Have you had a fear do that to you? Um, and so let me explain intuition now. So intuition, I feel like intuition sounds simple. So it'll usually just be like, oh, just go do it or just try it. It's usually little subtle thoughts or, oh, I wonder what this would feel like, or I wonder what this would be like. Or it will tell you maybe like, hey, like just go take a nap or like little stuff. It'll give you little actions. Like it's a usually very subtle voice. I feel for me when it comes to intuition, it's more of a feeling more so than I get a picture in my head. Like I'm wondering for you guys, like how do you when you get an intuition, like what do you feel, or do you like see something visually? So for example, with fear, usually you'll see something more visual, right? For me, I see things more visual. I see a whole movie. But I'm wondering what you guys like. What do you guys experience when you get fear versus intuition, or like, is it like a feeling, a gut in your stomach? Like, do you hear like a voice in your head saying, "Do this, do this"? Like, how does it work for you? And I like this example. It's like intuition usually doesn't give you a whole paragraph. It'll give you like one word or like a small sentence, and that's it. And if you catch it, you catch it. I'm not sure yet. It really depends on the how long I'm gonna stay in live. It really depends on the conversation going. Most of the time I last for like 30 minutes or so. If this conversation it could be for an hour. But I do definitely have to get off by 2:30. Um, but yeah, so usually it's often one simple thought um that keeps returning. I find that the intuition will keep on coming back over and over again. So like if you ignored it once, it'll usually keep on coming back subtle. It'll keep on coming back and you won't be at peace. I feel like you have this like there's like a I don't want to say it's a gut feeling, but it's like maybe you have like a heavy feeling where it just keeps on coming back over and over again. And for me, when this used to happen, I would start to pay attention because I may have ignored it before. But then when I notice it keeps on popping up in my head over and over again, that's usually when I start kind of paying attention. Um, so for example, so I remember I was looking into a coach, but I didn't exactly want to get a coach for strategy. So any of you guys just dropping in, I'm talking about fear vs intuition. Um, I'm the only one watching live because that's okay. I think there's more people in there. But yeah, for anyone that's like watching, we're talking about intuition vs fear. That's completely okay because people watch the replay. Um, so I remember I was hiring a life coach, and basically what happened is I did some research, and I kind of came by her by accident. And I felt very pulled to this coach. Like this was a life coach, and I was like, huh, she seems very interesting. So I was like, why not? Um, and so there was a fear though, because I had to talk through it. Where I was like, well, what if I waste my money with this life coach, and it doesn't go anywhere? But then there was a part of my intuition that was like, try it. And if it doesn't work, the worst case scenario is you learn something new. And what ended up happening is I ended up going through it because I have this thing where I feel like, well, if I don't do it, I'm just gonna keep on wondering about it. Like, have you ever had that happen to you where um you basically tried to make a decision and then maybe you didn't do it, but then you keep on thinking about it? That's me. It's like FOMO. So I ended up going with the coaches, that specific life coach, and I would say she was okay. Um, for me, I wanted more. She wasn't horrible or anything like that. I didn't feel like, oh, I need my money back. But the thing is that I tried it, and what you could learn from this is like it's like following your intuition doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect. It doesn't mean that like something extravagant's going to happen. Sometimes it's just trying it and then you get a new perspective. So from her, I remember getting like a new just like a new fresh perspective. Um and it was needed, but I didn't feel like I needed to move forward with her and do more sessions. Um and it's just recognizing that like I think we sometimes put so much weight on our intuition because we think like, oh my god, like, oh, am I making the right decision? Like if I make the decision, like is it going to lead me to the perfect outcome? And I don't believe it's about perfect outcome, but I do believe it's about trusting yourself and just going with that first thought. Like just even if it's like, oh, it can go another way, it's just following that gut, like following that intuition that's telling you maybe just try it, right? Because then it opens doors to other things, right? In this case, like hiring that life coach made me see like, okay, like hiring that life coach made me see, okay, like, okay, maybe this is not exactly what I needed, even though I maybe thought I needed. And then it helps me refine what I'm looking for. Hopefully that makes sense. Um, and so I'm gonna talk more about fear. So fear creates urgency. Fear could create panic because we talked about that. Um, Creates worst case scenarios. This is in a nutshell. And then usually it'll want certainty before action. And usually I have to catch myself. So like if you're in a place where you're trying to make a decision, right? And you're trying to maybe, I don't know, maybe you're trying to change your job. Or maybe you're trying to go back to school. Or I don't know, maybe you know you need to take a break from work, life, whatever it is. Usually we want, sometimes I feel like when we're wanting to have proof in what we're seeing before we do something, sometimes it's fear. Because I think fear has a habit of us preventing us from taking the next step to move fear forward. When you tell yourself, oh, well, I need to see this happen first before I do this. Or I need to see this happen first before I do that thing or I go here. Usually it's a sign that it's like a sudden fear that you're trying to usually it's a certain fear where it's a fear that it's prevent you from moving forward. You know this, but it's like an excuse for you not to take the next step and what you need to do. Um, and I have to admit, like sometimes I have to catch myself when I say stuff like that, because the reality is that action follows what you're about to see. Like you need to act, you need to take action to see the next step. It's usually not the other way around. Like they usually, it's very rare that you're gonna see first what's gonna happen first in order to do the next thing. um, Another thing that fear focuses on is loss. So it's like if you have like a fear of lack of like what's that word? So not a lack of not a lack of, not just a lack of finances, but scarcity. That's what it is. So it's like you have this like usually it's like it's scarcity, so it could come in different ways. Like so I've seen this a lot in the business community. Hey, so is it hot where you live? Well, for the summer I'm out of town. It's been raining here. Yeah, it's a little bit more cooler where I am in Toronto. um But yeah, so anyways, so let me get back into it. So yeah, so usually I've seen scarcity in a place where like let's say someone creates like a business community, right? And let's say they do this one profession, right? Like say they're like a coach or maybe a gym teacher, and they don't want other people to be to come into the community being a gym teacher, because they're afraid that they're gonna take all their clients. And so when you really look at it and you analyze it, you're like, okay, does that form of scarcity make sense? Right? Because no, because you can't control like the people in your community who they want to work with, who they want to resonate with. Um, you can't focus on stuff like that. What is this? Hold on one second. It's weird. Um, so I feel like it's a sense of something that you're afraid to lose, or it could be scarcity like around your job where you're like, oh, like if I leave this job, am I gonna find something else? So like scarcity could come in different ways when it comes to loss. It usually doesn't focus on gain. You're usually focused on, oh, what do I have to lose, type thing. So I feel like intuition, um usually, I feel like it's the opposite of fear. Like there's a sense of peace. Usually there's some type of clarity. Sometimes it's not gonna make sense to other people. It's one of those, like intuition is something that most of the time it's not going to feel rational. It may be a very uncommon thing that you're hearing in your mind that doesn't necessarily make sense to the normal person. As like intuition is like you're taking an action that maybe not be the norm, but it ends up working. But like it's not the norm to other people. It doesn't make sense to other people. Like most of the time, so I will give an example of this. I remember when I had like my Amazon business and I wanted to get out of it. Like when I would tell people, everyone would be like, "Yeah, but you make money from it. Like, why would you leave the industry? Da 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 da. Why would you change?" But like now that I look back, I now understand. Like, oh, like this was an intuition where I just felt like I needed to leave. It was time. Like I needed to close that business and go to a new chapter, right? And it's not going to make sense. And sometimes, if you're not aware of this, you're gonna follow what other people say to do, right? Because people put their rational logic into decisions, but sometimes like rational and logic is not always the best step moving forward. Like sometimes you have to listen here. If there's a voice telling you to do something, you need to listen. And usually it knows your steps ahead, way ahead than what you know now. So I remember listening to this podcast, and a woman really explained it well. And she said usually it's your, and I'm gonna try to explain it as best way as I can. She said usually your future self will give you those ideas so that way you can be working on your present to get to that future self. Meaning, like when you get like an intuition that maybe says, "Oh, maybe take the." You ever had those? Did you ever have an intuition moment where it told you to go to a different direction or something, and then something happens? So like maybe you're driving one day and you usually make a left, but then you make a right one day, and then you hear there was like some type of crash. It doesn't have to be that extreme, but like, or it's like an intuition where, like, so for me, this happened recently where I was thinking of going to an event, and then I don't know, something, I didn't feel pulled to it, to the event, and I ended up not going. And then I found out basically 2 days ago that it was like basically canceled. And then now people are trying to like obviously scramble to get their refund for their planes and like their plane flights and all that. And I remember thinking, oh my God, that was my intuition moment. Right. And so that's what I mean by like usually like an intuition moment. Um it's like something in myself, like my future self knew this, and there was a reason why I didn't feel pulled to it. My future self, it's like kind of already knew this. And then I was able to like listen to it, and then it prevented me from doing that. Anyway, so yeah, so this podcast, her name is Hillary something. I have to get her name, but she explained that, and she's like, a lot of times the decisions is like usually so advanced because it's usually your future self basically like giving you the idea, it's just pausing the idea, or maybe it's giving you a warning for something or whatever it is in the future because it already knows, and then you download in your present, and then you basically take the action with that. Now if you listen to it, that's kind of up to you. um and I want to say this, like intuition will also feel aligned when it's scary. And the thing is, just because something feels scary and you're maybe fearful of taking the next step or taking a risk doesn't mean it's wrong. I feel like a lot of things that I've taken a risk and it worked. Usually were the ones where I was fearful, I was scared, I was nervous, I maybe had a knot in my stomach, but I knew something, like I knew within me, like deep down, I needed to do it. And so something I feel like people mistake the fear to not do it. But the reality is that if you're doing something new and you're not familiar with it, there's gonna be some type of fear, right? Any of you guys experienced that? Like you maybe did something where you had fear, but you did it anyways because you felt like, oh, I just had to do it. Let me know in the comments, or person do it too in the chat. Do it too in the chat if you experienced that, with your intuition. Um, And I found too, like some of the best decisions that you have in your life will scare you. Like some of my best decisions that basically changed the course of my life were the most scariest moments. Um it was one of the most scariest moments. Um it's usually when you're trying to make a decision, especially if it's an intuitive decision, those are the times where maybe like life looks like a mess, where it'll usually look like a mess or it feels very scary, but usually those turn out to be the best decisions. Because for some reasons, like we tend to listen more when our back is against the wall, when we're like, okay, I tried everything, I tried avoiding that very thing, and then there's a part of you that just kind of like yields, and you're like, okay, it's time. um And so what you have to take from this is like maybe like fear shouldn't be your signal to stop, nor should it be to go, right? You have to distinguish what's best for you. But like stopping because you have fear is not a reason. Because there's gonna be a lot of things that you're scared of, right? Um and choosing to like even take action through fear can be a growth that is beyond your imagination, beyond what you even thought for yourself. Like we have to stop letting fear like dictate like our actions. Like fear shouldn't be dictating your actions, right? Um, and so let's talk about like I think a lot of intuition comes from trust. So maybe in the past, like you maybe had a moment where you followed your intuition, no, or maybe you didn't follow the intuition, and then you're like, oh, um, and then you're like, oh, like man, like I wish I had done this. Like I know I had that moment when I had started my so basically I had started a singles page on Facebook. And this was around COVID. And I remember like I basically got derailed and didn't end up growing it to its capacity. Now it was growing with loyal followers, but I ended up hiring a coach and went a different direction. I shared that in yesterday's video. Um, but the biggest thing I learned from that is like sometimes you'll lose trust in yourself because you're like, oh, why didn't I listen to myself? And follow my gut instead of listening to other people. And that's another thing too, is like listening to other people and getting advice is okay, but it can be one of the biggest intuition killers because you may have the answer already, but then you're not sure, and then you second guess yourself and ask someone else, and that leads to you not trusting yourself because then it doesn't go the way that you're expecting to because you follow someone else's intuition. And most of the time, someone else's intuition doesn't work for you. And so the biggest key thing is if you want to build trust, take it small. Like journal. Like before asking someone else's opinion. You know, that has been the biggest game change for me. I did the book The Artist's Way. And you guys should look into it. And it basically helped me reconnect with myself. It helped me get back to my inner child. I really miss that. Like I didn't realize it helped me do things that I used to enjoy that I didn't. It actually helped me really get clear on what I want to do. Like you're seeing me in these lives like almost daily because I started to just listen to myself think. And I think a lot of times we get caught up in the like routines. We get caught up we like wake up, brush our teeth, take a shower, and then we go, 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 go. And sometimes we don't even take like 5 minutes of silence or 5 minutes of just writing. Like if you just write, it just forces you to slow down. It forces you to like put everything like that's in your head on paper. You don't realize how much we keep in our head. Like when I started writing, I was like, dang, I keep so much stuff in my head, right? Um, so another thing is like make small decisions, like without asking people. Like try not to ask someone like their opinion, and then just make small decisions. And also keep track of decisions that you made intuitively that were like it could be so small. Where maybe like one day you had an intuition and you're like, oh, like I want to have ice cream, and then it hits a spot. Like if you ever had that where like you put a one in the chat if you had ever had that where you're like something came to mind where you're feeling for like I don't know whether it's a fruit or something, and then you had it and you're like, oh, this hit the spot, this is exactly what I needed. And that's what it's like this small little things, or you listen to your tuition and you decide to go to class instead of somewhere else, or like you decide to sign up for pottery or something that you usually wouldn't do, like small things, and then you end up enjoying it. So it's like those little things. And also review your past decisions that worked out. So that's usually very intuitive, right? Review decisions that you made where it actually worked out. So you can rebuild that trust slowly and start listening to yourself. Um, and then what else? So I feel like just trust is built as you start to listen to yourself. Very small little actions. Like my confidence, like my trust in myself definitely boosted when I took the risk of myself when I got laid off and started a business because it opened doors to me being more confident and seeing another side of myself. But it's like if I didn't trust myself, I wouldn't have seen that. Um, so I want you for just to exercise what you would want to do. Maybe it's after video, during the video. Is like write down 3 things you can put in the chat too that where your intuition was right. So it's like maybe there was a friendship that fell off, and then you found out months later the person was weird, or maybe it could have been a job like that you left, and then you found out later that it got like they basically got, I don't know, maybe they closed down or everyone got laid off, or it could be event that you felt called to attend and it was the right thing, or you someone that you instantly connect with where you felt drawn to them. And then start collecting evidence. Like pay attention to the little things that starts working based on your intuition or decisions that you're making. Um, and you want to like just remember like I know sometimes it's easy to get caught up in like making perfect decisions when it comes to like because we're talking about intuition versus fear. If we could get caught up with, oh, like, is this the right decision, right, wrong? Yeah, so someone here in Toronto did my hair, thank you. So the goal isn't to be perfect. The goal isn't to make like the perfect, because you're not going to know that, you're not God. But the goal is to be listening to yourself. So if something tells you to do it, like, and there's a part of you that's telling you to do that thing, like, you have to know that even if it doesn't get the outcome that you want, there's a lesson somewhere, right? It's something to learn from, just like that life coach story I told you about. Like, there was a lesson from it, even though like she didn't end up being like the ideal life coach for me, but there was a lesson from it. I got to see there was some validating things about it, right? And I found that over time, once I trusted myself, I stopped obsessing over making a decision. I stopped obsessing, trying to figure out the right way, looking at the probabilities. Oh, should I go right, left, straight, like back, whatever. Um, and you'll just start to trust yourself even more and start to recognize it. I think that's very key. 'Cause I think sometimes like it's very hard to distinguish like, oh, is that my intuition or fear? But like slowly you'll start to distinguish and know that I think what it is too is having that safe space where you're like, okay, I know I'm safe. Like I know, like I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know the how, but it's like it's safe for me to like follow through with this decision. Um, and then know you'll be okay. Um, but yeah, like this is what I had for intuition versus fear. And a question I'll end with is, what decision are you currently overthinking because you're afraid of making the wrong choice? And we'll end that there. And as always, right, I always have the build where we are clarity call. You could always click over in the description and book a call. It's gonna be $497, but it's $87 now. And this would be a one-on-one call, and we'll get clear, like maybe on decisions that you've been wanting to make, like an idea you've been having that's been collecting dust in your notes, or there's something that you want to build, a business you want to build. Like these clarity calls are for you, and it's always in the description. Let me know if you have any questions about fear and intuition. If not, like definitely put it in the comments, and I'll be looking out for it. But thank you for watching, and if you're watching the replay, thank you. All right, so have a good day. Bye.